All right, well, now it's time in our session to introduce you to Phil Better. So Phil is he's up in Canada, and early morning, as I said, for him to join us tonight. And he's a podcaster. So as I say, he got started in podcasting way back in 2014. And I can see by some of the faces here, that was before some of you guys were born or not. So 2014, and he sort of heard a podcast by a chap by the name of Kevin Smith. Anyone heard of Kevin Smith? Okay, excellent. So a couple of people here, fantastic. Well, that was his inspiration, and there are often people there that inspire us to take action or to do something. Kevin Smith was that guy that we have to thank for Phil being here today. So thanks, Kevin. So he started his podcasting journey in 2017. He launched his first podcast, and that was the Phil Better Show, and that's still up there today. So he got, what did he get, 200 episodes down, 6,000 downloads, and 200 Facebook followers. So that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? But he's done a whole lot better than that as well too. In fact, he's got 4 podcasts, and he helps other podcasters as well. He's done over 200 interviews with successful business owners and entrepreneurs, and that's in his Invest in Yourself, a digital entrepreneur podcast. In fact, that was the one that I was on only a few weeks back. We had a chat. And so he's done about 200 interviews. He's had invitation to media events like Startup Super Cup in France. So podcasting can be your entry into sort of other places that are not open to you. And he's done talks at Slay Your Life in Las Vegas. He's been a winner of multiple awards for Best Business Podcast, particularly Best Business Podcast in 2020, and Best Podcast Producer. So he's got awards for that. He's had over 100,000 downloads a year. So the great thing about podcasting is it doesn't actually matter where you are. If you've got a good podcast and you do it right, you can get those sort of numbers as well too. And he's got a global rank in the top 10%. In listennotes.com. So through all that, he met his first client, Lloyd Ross, and Lloyd, with him, he launched the Money Grows on Trees, the podcast. And here's something that's of interest to Australia. So he ranks at number 24 all time in Australia for that podcast. So that's someone in Australia that's number 24, and it's in the how-to category. And he did that in only 4 weeks. So if you think it's going to take a slow burn to get there, he's done that in just 4 weeks. And he's also ranked number 1 in Iceland as well too. So you get the opportunity to rank in other countries. And he's had a 50% increase in downloads week after week. So tonight, Phil is going to be talking to us about how to create a podcast, and more importantly, how to use your podcast to generate leads, content, and to make it part of your business strategy. So let's put our hands together and give a good virtual round of applause to Phil.
Hi, everyone. First of all, Nick, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here and sharing podcasting with all you guys. So some of you may be too young to know what a podcast is, so I'll explain. It's very simple. It's just an audio program. What we're doing right now can be a podcast. And if you do have, like I know I see some people here have networks. If you do network meetups, those can be podcasts, easily translated into podcasting. But yeah, I'm going to teach you guys how to do endless leads with podcasts, content marketing with podcasting, and I'm very excited. If you do have a question during the show, just raise your hand, and you guys, I believe Nick's crew will be able to let you guys in, and you can ask your question whenever you want. I don't mind. I love answering questions. It makes it a little easier for me because then I hear myself talk over and over, and I'm not a fan of hearing my own voice. So if you have questions, feel free to stop me at any time and ask them away. No questions yet. Cool. All right. So when you're going to start a podcast, it's just figuring out who you're helping. And since we're all business owners, we already know who we're helping. We're helping our clients. So that's who you're going to make your podcast about. Now, to create the endless leads part of it, you have to decide if you want to interview people or if you just want to teach them something. I prefer interviewing because I don't like the sound of my own voice, so I get other people to talk for me, which creates the content for all content for my businesses, sharing the knowledge my other people have, so it gives you an authority as well. Podcasting, so a true podcast is just audio. It has to have an RSS feed. So if it has an RSS feed, it's a podcast. But it can be video is more vodcast. But yeah, it can be both video and audio. But you need to have that RSS feed. So the minute you have the RSS feed, you're good to go. But yeah, your podcast, like I said, can be you can interview people, you can teach people. Interviewing is somewhat easier, and that's where you get your lead gen, because it's easier to get someone to come onto a podcast than it is to get them onto a sales call, because everybody wants to feel a little special. And if you say, hey, come on to my podcast, we can talk about what's your business and what you're doing, then you have an easy connection to go to the next level and say, hey, do you need help here or there? Because you can do it before the show or after the show when you're interviewing them. So that's how you get that endless leads, because as you create the content, you always have that link, hey, if you want to be a guest on the podcast. And as you promote your podcast, more people are going to click on that. They're going to go into your funnel. They're going to want to be a guest on your podcast. And that's going to just continue as endless leads as you promote it. Plus, you have this content that answers questions. Like Nick can now use this in other Facebook groups, this actual episode, and be like, hey, I heard you were talking about podcasting on this one post. I interviewed a guy who creates podcasts, monetized podcasts, grows podcasts. This is what he said, and he can list it out. If you're interested in listening to the episode, here you go. And since he has all his links in there, he talks about his Facebook group. He's bringing people into his Facebook group because they know the value of being on a live webinar like you guys here, learning as you go instead of having to wait for the episode to be live. So yeah, that is how you get that endless leads. It's just inviting people onto your podcast. But to start your podcast, all you need is this headphone and a laptop and Zoom, if you will. And you're good to go. You can record your interviews there. You just talk about what it is you're good at. So if you're creating, like Paul has his live streaming of funerals, he can talk to previous clients. He can talk about upcoming clients, about what he does, how they've liked his services, so you can get testimonials out of it. Or you can not even sell on it. You can sell on the back end after you're done interviewing someone. You can say, hey, I always love solving problems. That's an object as well. It's early. I am sorry. Whew, out of breath here already. But yeah. Apologize there. Just a little dip in the internet here. I apologize for that.
I got a heart attack. I thought that was me.
No, my end. My end. No, my end. I apologize, Nick, giving you that heart attack. But yes, your podcast it's simple how to make it. Everybody overcomplicates it because they think it's back when I first started where it's all entertainment, but there's so many more business people coming into the podcasting world that you can have a podcast about anything. If you're a network marketer, you can talk about your network marketing. If you don't even know how to get guests on and you're nervous about interviewing people, you can do what like my client Lloyd Ross does, where he just does 4 episodes. He teaches in each episode. It's off of his book. It started with his book. We just did episodes of his book on chapters on his book. If you guys have a book, you can do the same. If you have if you want to document your journey, document it in 15-minute episodes. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's very simple. Everything that you can, as long as you're talking, you're good. As long as you're teaching someone something. If you don't want it to be on your business, you can always do it on your passion. Like you can do movies. Like my first podcast, The Feel Better Show, is a movie review show. You know, we review action movies from the 90s. And then you can either put a sponsor, you can put your business sponsoring it in the front end, or on the back end, you can have your business sponsoring it. You can say, hey, if you're ever interested in, having services, your funeral service live streams, so for family members that can't be there, make sure you check it out. Or if you want to learn how to do affiliate marketing, make sure you check out my free course, my free Facebook group. that is there too. That is how you can, can create. Yes, that's a good one. Jenny, I'll get to that in a second. You can just create that generate the leads that way. Jenny's asking, I hear that many start podcasts but don't go past maybe 4 episodes. What do you do? What do you bring to podcasting that keeps content fresh and has people besides your mom want to tune in? Yeah, so podfade is something very, very real. And what causes podfade is just the overwhelmingness of podcasting. Before, there wasn't many tools to use to create the content that is like the Facebook posts, the Instagram posts, all this. And it usually just lies on one person to do it, like the podcaster to do it. And it's a full business. Podcasting can run you like close to nothing a year to over $100,000 a year, depending on what level of production you're doing. But there are tools that can help you. And how you keep it going fresh is you talk to your audience. I know because I interview people, my episodes are always fresh because I have new people coming in. Like I had Nick on the podcast. He told a totally different story than anybody else who has come on to the podcast before. And it was able to create that new content. But if you're just starting out, if you're just going to be soloing it, choose what you're passionate about, what it is that you talk about to your audience, and you can talk for lengths, and write out bullet points. And each one of those bullet points is an episode. And what you want to do is you want to keep it very simple. You want to do it only weekly episodes so that you're not overwhelmed. And you can do like I do batch recordings of my episodes. So my interviews, I do about 10 a week, so that's only 2 a day, but I usually do it in 2 days. I do it on Wednesdays and Thursdays. I do 10 episodes in there, so either 4 and 6 or 5 and 5. I try and get it 5 and 5, but I do a lot of back-to-back so that I have a lot of content ready and I don't have to worry about the pod fade. You want to get an editor as soon as possible. That's going to save you so much time. And you can find them on Fiverr. You can find them on online, just looking for podcast editors. There's a lot of companies that can help you. You can get a VA. VAs are great. One of my buddies started with a VA, and he's ended up having his own editing company, helping other podcasters. But what you want to do is you just want to remember why it is you're doing your podcast, like why, and who you're serving. When you remember who you're serving, who you're helping out, that's going to be keeping you continually going and going through that pod fade. And you just remember you have to create that ideal avatar. It's either your business, who you're serving in your business, or who the podcast is for. And you just remember what they are interested in. Would they be interested in this topic? You know, the old WWJD, what would Jesus do? You just go, what would your avatar do? Like, would they be interested in this? Is this something they want to learn more about? Am I bringing value to my people? And that's how I do it when I'm asking the questions. I embody who my avatar is. And I ask the questions of Nick, of all my other guests, like, why are you doing this? How did you do this? Because I generally want to know. I'm embodying my avatar is someone who's curious and wants to get into the entrepreneurial world but doesn't know how to. So I have to ask all these questions about, okay, you do digital marketing. How did you get into this digital marketing? Why are you doing it like this? What makes you special? And this helps you just to the next level. It allows you to be always curious and always serving your audience the best way possible. And like most of the hard work for podcasting, you don't have to create your RSS feed like I did back in the day. All your hosting platforms have it. When it comes to cost for your hosting platform, you can have free all the way to ones that cost you like $75 a month. But what you want to do is just what are you willing to do, what you're willing to pay for what you get, and you make the decision there. We got a question from Facebook. How long should a podcast be? In all honesty, that's a question that you ask your avatar. You go, okay, how long are they willing to sit and listen? Now you can look at interview podcasts. You don't want them to be too short. but you also don't want them to go for 12 hours like Joe Rogan's podcast. That's not going to help you. No one is as interesting as Joe Rogan at this point in your career. Maybe you are, but I would suggest you start with like a 30-minute podcast. If you're interviewing someone, if it's a solo, try and keep it around the 15-minute mark. That's going to keep everybody still engaged. But if you have someone like Nick on your podcast that just is dropping wisdom after wisdom, you don't want to cut him off after 30 minutes. You let him go for as long as you possibly can. But also always remembering and respecting your guest time, so you don't want to overindulge in their time. But yeah, and this is using your podcast is a great way to get one-on-one time with your ideal client, because once they come on, you have a warm-up session beforehand. Like before we went live, me and Nick were chit-chatting, going over everything in the guise of getting ready for the podcast or the webinar, just making sure the tech's going, chit-chatting, catching up about stuff. And you can even mention, hey, I do this for a living. If you're interested, we can talk afterwards. And that's what I do. I say, hey, I do podcasting. Let's talk about it later. Oh, wow, Facebook. Yeah, I met Bert Kreischer in Ottawa when he was doing his tour. But yeah, you can... Best ways to promote your podcast. That is a good question. Very simply, the best way I've found is using going into Facebook groups and answering questions by talking about your podcast, but not sharing the link. And the way to do that is to see where people have a pain point. If they have a pain point with, they're asking a question, hey, how do I generate leads? Or how do I connect? How do I network? And you've interviewed someone or you've answered that question already on your episode, you go into that comment thread on Facebook and you chat. You literally tell them, hey, do this, and you'll get the most out of it. If you're interested, I have an episode on my podcast that talks about that. Let me know if you're interested for a link. I did that in regards to monetizing a podcast. One of the guests that I had on, he talked about monetizing his podcast within the first 4 weeks. And I just wrote exactly like that. And I said, hey, if you're interested for the link, comment and I'll share it. Someone commented, I shared the link. That episode got 39 additional downloads just that day from that link. So that's the easiest way to promote your podcast. That's the most organic way. But you can do audiograms, you can do video clips from using the video AO, that tool that Nick just shared with you, to do clips throughout the week. Those are some of the easiest ways to do it, to promote your podcast, and getting on other podcasts that as well, because that gives you an audience. Do you follow the same format every time, or is it good to mix it up? So having a same format keeps it systematized and allows you to allows your audience to get used to the format and know, like, hey, I don't really like this section of the podcast, I want to jump over here, or jump further along. They can kind of gauge, but at the same time you want to keep it fresh as well. So you can try different things. One podcast that I listen to, it's an Aussie podcast called The Weekly Planet. It's more for like movie and pop culture news. They have different segments in their podcast, but it's not always the same segments. It depends on the episode they're recording, but you already know somewhat of the segments they have. They have their core segments and they switch out a couple. So you have that option as well if you choose to. So you have that option, so you can keep it the same format. I have a relatively the same format. The first and last question are always the exact same. Questions in the between those two are different depending on the guest I have, because I'm always learning from my guests. Just going back to my train of thought. Yeah. So once you have your get the RSS feed we talked about, the hosting platform is whatever hosting. I like Podbean. They're great. They're one of the biggest market share. They're simple to use. They're not that expensive. So you get a lot of great bang for your buck with Podbean. And they handle distribution for you. You don't have to worry about distributing it to Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, or wherever the thousands of other smaller, more niched podcast distribution platforms where you can listen to podcasts. Sorry, they handle that all yourself. You don't have to go searching for it. So that's what a great hosting platform will do for you. It allows you to take care of that without worrying. Yeah, and your show notes, that can be done by using a tool like ChatGPT. You can get the transcript and throw it into ChatGPT if you want to have them create the show notes for you, the timestamps, everything like that. Or you can use a program called CapShow, a great business tool that has all the great prompts already in it, and you just have to upload your audio and it will give you your show notes, your titles of the episodes, timestamps, Facebook posts, blog posts, all these amazing things in one go, so that you don't really have to prompt it to get all that good stuff. And then you use that in all your promotion. You can update it, add your own little twist to it. But yeah, that's generally the best way of using it. And yeah, it's done. Like, that's how podcasting is so simple. You get yourself a headphone like this, a Blue Yeti microphone, and you're good to go. Yeah. Any other questions anybody have?
Just wondering, Phil, I mean, everyone these days carries around an iPhone or a Samsung or whatever sort of thing. Are they good enough to produce a podcast on?
Yeah, Money Grows on Trees is actually recorded on Lloyd's iPhone. When it's not an interview episode, he has a Rode mic, plugs it into his iPhone, and just sits in his office, records one episode on the voice memo, emails it to me, records the other one, emails it to me, records another one, emails it to me. And then I take it and I do my magic, making it at least sound a bit better than talking into sounding like it's coming off a phone.
And so that editing, you're just sort of editing it to tidy it up to make it sound like it's not in a tin can, that sounds like it's in the studio. But you've got tools that are simple to do. Well, I was going to say, I'm probably going to give away all your secrets now, aren't I?
No, so actually, I use Audacity. I keep it very simple. I've kind of trained Lloyd along the way to make sure that his recording sounds better and better. I ask him to hold like 10 seconds of silence in the room so I can get the ambient noise to crush out any of that noise that comes around. Give me 1 second. I'm just about to sneeze, and I don't want to blow everybody's eardrums.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Which just goes to the question there. What happens when you want to sneeze on a podcast?
You make sure you have a mute button very close and handy so that you don't destroy your guest eardrums or anybody who's listening's eardrums. But yeah, Audacity is a free tool to do editing. If you have a chance, hire an editor as soon as you possibly can. They can be very low depending on your needs. But yeah, I do a quick cleanup of his audio. I put the intro and outro on it, and then I upload it and take care of that because Lloyd's a little too busy to do all that technical stuff. And the technical stuff isn't too hard. It's only as technical as you want it to be. There's a lot of the hosting platforms that take care of all of that for you, do all the real hard lifting and technical spots for you.
So in terms of podcasts, I mean, how many podcasts out there? Like, there must be millions of them at the moment.
Currently, there is estimated to be about 4 million podcasts that have been created. And depending on who you ask in the podcasting industry, there's about maybe 100,000 that are actually active in the last 30 days have put out an episode.
So with that sort of volume of podcasts out there, how do you get recognized on the platforms? Because if it's a bit like Facebook or those social media feeds, you pop up and then you push down and no one ever sees you again. So how do you get some sort of traction on those platforms there so that people see you and download it? Because obviously downloads are important metric for podcasts. You've got some strategies that you use around all that.
So to get into the news and noteworthy or getting to the charts, what you want to do is when you first launch your podcast, you want to have at least around 4 to 5 episodes right off the bat when you launch. So what I always suggest to people is you have 2 in the can at all times, and you have at least 3 more ready to go into the can. And what it means to be in the can means it's all ready and done for you to be. It's already scheduled, it's already up online, and so you don't have to worry about it. It's a completely done episode. But when you're launching, you want to have that 4 to 5 episodes so that when you talk to people and you do a 30-day launch window where you start talking about it on your social media platforms, you're getting them signing up to your newsletter. If you have a newsletter, you're only doing you're talking about it every week in a little part of the blurb. You're not dedicating a whole email to it. You're like, hey, if you're interested in learning about this, I have a podcast coming up. You should really subscribe here. You're the 30 days leading up to your launch, all you're doing is talking about podcasting. You're talking about, hey, just have an interview with this person. We're going to talk about this. You should sign up for this. We're doing a contest, all different type of things. And that just starts building your list and building hype around it. So when you do launch, people have 4 to 5 episodes to just crush and enjoy. And Apple's going to see that, Spotify's going to see that, Google, all these other platforms will start seeing this, and they're going to start going, wow, this podcast has a lot of activity around it, a lot of downloads already, a lot of listens, that we're going to start suggesting it out, and we're going to start putting it into different feeds inside and see if other people are going to catch up. And then there's more people downloading because they're going to see there's already a lot of episodes released. And that's going to help you build more following and get you into the news and noteworthy of different countries all around the world.
And so the podcasting, like Podbean, that platform there, you only need to upload your episode to that Podbean platform. Mm-hmm. And Podbean, that distributes it out to Spotify, iTunes, to all the other platforms. You don't have to do anything else with that.
No, they
upload it there.
Yeah, so once you sign up to Podbean, you go through their system, you create your RSS feed. They have an auto distribute feature where you just click, boom, one button, click, and they go over to Apple, connect with Apple, and go, here you go, Apple, here's this RSS feed, upload it to your system, go over to Spotify, goes over to Google, lets them know that, hey, there's a new podcast, so that you don't have to do it. If you're gonna hire me and I have me take care of it, I'm going to manually do that because I want those stats. I want to see, okay, how many people are listening on Apple? What is the average consumption? Where are they coming from? It gives you more detail than your actual hosting platform does because you can break it down from each platform and get more information. But if you don't need that technical stuff and you're okay with seeing the stats that Podbean brings you, you just submit it to Podbean and save yourself a headache.
So if you're uploading them to the different platforms, is there much more time involved in that there, or is there any additional benefits to, like, just someone like who's podcasting to doing that if the stats aren't that important?
If you're using it for business as a lead gen, your stats aren't that important because what you're doing is you're getting people on to talk to you, and that's where you're making most of your money. If you're doing a solo episode, then you'll need your stats so that you know where to push people or like direct people in to listen to your episode. So if you see that Spotify right now for Lloyd's podcast, using Lloyd as an example, Spotify is his main growth. He has over 3,000 people, or getting there to 3,000 people listening on Spotify alone versus Apple versus Google, where the numbers aren't as large. So I told him, hey, just direct everyone to Spotify. It's simpler. We already have a large following there. Let's just boost the audience there so that it helps us grow even more and it gives you that more authority. At that point, you want to have the stats from each platform but it's not necessary if you're just using it as a lead gen, because the downloads don't really matter. It's just a vanity, kind of like a vanity matrix at that point.
And so with all of those podcast platforms, are there any particular platforms that are good for, say, one type of business as opposed to another type of business? Or is it really just, try it and it's just sort of hit and miss?
It's there's not one that stands out. So there's you have to remember there's two in the podcast, and there's two different things. You have your hosting platform, which is things like Podbean, Bcast, podcast.co, Lisbon. Those are the hosting platforms. That's where you're going to put your audio, and they're just going to hold on to your audio. And then you have your distribution platforms, which is your Apple, your Spotify, your Google. Those, it doesn't really matter because they're all the same. They just Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon, they're all the same. Those are just people where they listen, and it doesn't really matter. It just, you can ask your audience, hey, where do you guys listen the most, and have them tell you. But you can just say, hey, we are exclusively on Spotify, just go to Spotify. It doesn't really matter. It's your hosting platform and what you want out of it.
Which really comes to the point. I think, was it Joe Rogan's exclusively on Spotify, but he gets paid quite a lot of money to do that. How do we get into that sort of sphere there where they're going to pay us lots of money to someone like Joe Rogan?
To get the money and get to the Joe Rogan level, one, make sure you have a massive audience. That's when you're going to get the Joe Rogan money. But to start making money, it's make sure your show notes have the links to your people to sign up, buy your products. So if you have affiliate products like Nick, you have all these great tools that you talk about. On most of those tools, they probably have an affiliate program. You join that affiliate and you put those links in the show notes, and you just mention, hey, if you want to talk any of the tools that we use today, make sure you use the links in the show notes down below. That's how the passive money can go. But using it for lead gen, that's where the most money comes from, because you can have them either your client directly on the podcast where you sign them up afterwards. I do it through podcasting. At the end of it, they're like, wow, this is a great system you have because it's seamless. How can I have the same system? And then we chat, set up a sales call later, when the sales call was kind of like demoing what I do with the emails and all that coming onto the podcast. But if you're coaching, you can do a coaching session. I know I interviewed someone on my podcast, probably the same day I interviewed Nick. I think that was a brutal day. I had like 6 interviews that day, but they actually use their coaching sessions as podcasts. So they get the permission, they record a full hour of their coaching session, and then they go through and they find one aspect that they really worked on really well, cut that down to 30 minutes, and that's what they put out there. Now you have your coaching sessions that you do, if you're a coach, as your content. And so people can hear how you coach and you guide the person through their issue. So if they have that same issue, they can go through the same session that you just did with your audience or your client. Or they're like, wow, I really love how this person does their coaching. I want to sign up for their coaching that way. And so now your podcast, your coaching sessions are now getting you more coaching clients, if you will. And it's the same with any business. You can either have your clients on, talk about working with you on your specific business, what you do, or you just talk about what you do and how you help people in your episodes.
So really the content that's in, it's almost like a try before you buy scenario, where you get to sort of hear what you like. And there's Zim says product in action. Best way to sell. So yeah, same sort of thing. People get to see and get some sort of experience that they can expect to get when they work with you as well too.
Yeah, it's nearly every business podcaster I've met does it that way, does the product in action method, either with their guest, selling directly to their guest, their service, or how they solve their pain point, or teaching the people how to solve their own pain point. And so it's like, oh, well, this person knows what they're doing. I'm going to go over to them and have them help me because they've already helped me so much for free with their podcast. And then we can go into, go ahead. Sorry, Nick.
I know, I was just going to say, so some of that lead gen is going to require, I suppose you could use ads to advertise your podcast, or organic methods. So those people that don't yet know you and are not on your email list yet, and are yet to discover you, I guess that's all of your new sort of lead gen that comes up.
Yeah.
So marketing, that sort of stuff there. Have you got any sort of tips around, whether you should use paid or whether you should use organic or anything? So for those people that are outside your current circle of contacts.
The biggest and best way is to be on other podcasts. The only way you're going to grow your podcast is to actually talk to people or get into the ears of people who are listening to podcasts. Convincing someone to listen to a podcast is super hard if they don't already listen to podcasts. But if they're already a podcast listener, it becomes light. It just becomes easier because they're already used to listening to podcasts. They already have a platform that they like to use. And so since your podcast is always going to be on there, because every podcast hosting platform distributes to podcast hosting platform, it's very confusing, goes out to all the other platforms that you can download and listen to podcasts. They're going to be already on it. They're going to be looking for it because they're already used to it. And people who listen to podcasts already have a higher than average income. So you're looking at the next level. They're educated, so they're more knowledgeable, so they're aware of all this tech, and that's the best way. Like, that's going to get you by getting onto more podcasts that are in the area of your expertise. And I shared Nick this tool when he was on my podcast, but it's rephonic.com/graph. That tool will actually help you find all the podcasts that you need to be on by just asking your audience what podcasts they listen to. And then you put that into the graph, and it will give you a 3D representation of all the podcasts that are listened to by that audience of the podcast you searched. And then you just start emailing all those other podcasts to get on it and sharing with them how you can help.
So if you're a podcast host, we've just had, can you repeat the name of that tool? We'll drop that.
Yeah, here, I'll do that right now while Nick asks his question.
All right. So while you're doing that, I'm just, what was I was going to ask? Oh, yes, getting on to other people's podcasts. I am sure that you probably get requests from people that are maybe unsuitable for your type of podcast, and you get others that just fit the bill. They just absolutely nail it. So how do you sort of put together a process so that you get the people that you want, but you're able to filter out the others, but do it nicely so that you're not not being a jerk about it as well. Or maybe you are, I don't know.
No, I'm not. I'm Canadian. I don't think it's in my blood to be mean to people. I just apologize and say, sorry, you're not a fit. And I'm direct. I just share with them, hey, because I get a lot of podcast producers, podcast promoters jumping onto in my inbox going, hey, how can I do this? We have this person, we think it's the best for you. They're going to fit your podcast. And they don't, because I like digital entrepreneurs, because it's like, this is the future. We're going to be building more businesses online. And I'll get doctors. I've had doctors come on or request to come on. And I go, sorry, it doesn't seem like a great fit at the moment, but thank you very much. And I just say, no, you're not a good fit. When I sometimes go into Facebook groups and I decide to do an en masse, if I'm not directly inviting people, sometimes I'll find individuals that I want to come on my podcast because I want to learn from them. Then I send them a direct message going, hey, this is who I am. This is my podcast. This is what I think you can bring to my podcast. I would love to have you on. And I tell them exactly why I want them on my podcast by saying, you talked on this podcast. I want to follow up on this topic. And they're more receptive. But when I go into Facebook groups and I ask, hey, I'm looking for podcasts, I'm looking for podcast guests, I have a form that they fill out. And that helps me vet them to even more say, okay, does this person fit the criteria? Will I be interested in learning from them? Will my ideal avatar be interested in learning from them? If yes, then I put them into another email list that just brings them through the process of getting them ready for the podcast.
And you've got a fairly automated system with all that as well, too, because I think I picked up your one off some random Facebook notification. It just came in my feed. And, that looks interesting. I'll fill it out. And I remember sitting there. It was on a Sunday morning. I had a coffee. I was sitting on the balcony, just scrolling through Facebook as you do. This Feel Better comes up. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I need to get it now because my objective is to get onto at least one podcast a month. I thought, yeah, this sort of fits the bill. Filled it out, not expecting to hear back anything, and lo and behold, in comes the automated email. I thought, okay, well, I made it past that part, and so it's a fairly automated thing to help to sort of screen and make the job easy. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've built an automation using no-code coding tools to help me just go through my process so that I don't really have to be that involved. Because when you're running 4 podcasts, I don't have time to be in the DMs on my phone DMing people, hey, what day works for you? I have something that's automated. So when they apply to get in, I get a notification.
Whoops, he's disappeared. Canadian internet has just killed us for a while. Hopefully back. Just while he has disappeared, have a think about your businesses. Anyone here interested in a podcast or thinking about either producing their own podcast or getting onto someone else's podcast?
I'm happy to be made a fool of on someone else's.
Yep. Anyone else sort of interested in that?
Yeah, I ran a podcast for a couple of years, a few years ago, and then I just got sick and I just stopped it for a while. We got to 76 episodes, so I'll probably start looking at regurgitating that to start with, and then adding some more guests. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Peter, what's your sort of interest there?
Yeah, I've been tasked by the coach I work for to get a podcast up and running. He doesn't have the time for it. He's just thrown the ball at me and said, "Do it."
Yeah. All right. Well, that's probably as good as any. Yeah.
So I've got the microphone and a camera, but that's all I've got so far.
Oh, excellent. Oh, that's good. Well, one of the things that you can do, and this is a place that I find podcasters who are looking for good guests. There are Facebook groups in there for podcasting. So if you have a look for podcast guest Facebook groups, there are some of them there with about 20,000, 30,000 members in it. But you can scroll through those and you'll quickly find some opportunities for you. And pretty much every segment, so every business we've got here, then there is a podcast that you would fit into. So one of the things I've found is that when you do apply for podcasts, make sure that's in a sector that is going to resonate with you and is going to be helpful, and that it's going to be a natural fit for as well. And the other thing I do is to go and listen to a couple of episodes. So I'll jump on the podcast, actually listen to the episodes to get some sort of feel for the flavour of it and what they're doing. And that way there, it's not a surprise, when you go through, you know how to pitch them and you know how to talk about it as well too. But that's probably an easy way to get into podcasting is to go into some of those Facebook groups and to do that. And we've got Phil back. It looks like he's on his phone now because the computer died. And we just need to probably unmute it as well too.
There we go. Yeah, unmute myself. Sorry about that. Technical problems.
There you go. It's always the vagaries of the tech there. So yeah.
So where was I?
Well, I was just going to ask you a question. In fact, is that often the easiest way to get started in podcasting is to be a guest on someone else's show. And I was just going through one of my strategies, a couple of Facebook groups that have got a lot of people looking for guests and things, and filtering and sorting through those. But from your experience, apart from that app that you popped up there, which is having a look at other podcasts, what sort of tips would you have about how to approach a potential podcast host, how to look for them, how to approach them, and to give yourself the best possible shot to be on a podcast?
My advice is you listen to a few episodes of the podcast first. Figure out if there was a topic that you can add to. Say, like, if I was looking to get on Nick's podcast like this and I hadn't already met him, I would be I would listen to a previous episode, a couple of them, and go, hey, you had John on your podcast. He talked about this. I would love to be able to add more value to it by talking on this topic, more related to podcasting. I would love to talk about how Johnny can use his podcast to do this, to grow their influence. What can you add to what value can you add to the audience? That's the key point, because that's where you want to go. Where are you bringing the audience? How can you add more to the audience instead of what I get out of it? It's like, what does the audience get? And that's what you want to do.
Yeah. So for those of us that are a little, let's say, shyer and have not been in that and the camera. Well, the good thing about a podcast is you don't actually have to be on camera, and the camera can just be a thing that is there for conversation. But for those that maybe sort of think, well, what have I got to talk about? Or there are people that are better than I in this sort of subject area. How do you get through that, and why should people be interested in getting on a podcast, even if they think they've got nothing of value or not much of value?
It's just that it can grow your network. My business colleague, I have two agencies. I have my Feel Better consulting agency, where I just consult for podcasts. People hire me and I coach them through if they want coaching for that, or if they need a strategy, I do that. But I also have the podcast launch agency, and the person I launched with that agency, Chris Cowden, he was a former student of mine, and he has networked like mad. He was very scared that no one's going to listen to me or no one's going to think I'm relevant. So he started interviewing experts, and these are experts in all different type of domains: SaaS marketing, podcasting, affiliate marketing, like just the experts of the experts, business experts. His network is now his network, and without him we wouldn't have done a 12-hour live stream with AppSumo, one of the largest marketplaces for entrepreneurs. Like, he literally just asked them to, hey, do you want to sponsor this? This is what we're doing. And through the conversations, he ended up creating this 12 hours, 24 speakers, talking about they're all experts in their domain of podcasting, and they were there helping, giving all this out. And that's just from him not even wanting to do a podcast. He had no idea how powerful it was. And now his network is probably in the excess of 7 to nearly 8 figures worth of people inside that network from just podcasting. So it's the connections you make is astronomical, and that's why you should also start a podcast.
Yeah. And I guess if it just widens your whole network. Because someone here said they're in a local town, and how do you get outside of a local town in order to expand your business?
Yeah,
great opportunity with podcasting. Yeah,
it's a huge opportunity. Like, think about it. Like Lloyd Ross, he's in Australia, he's on the Gold Coast, but he's reaching people in the United States, in Canada, in Switzerland, in Iceland. He's the number one in Iceland. Like, that's how powerful your podcasting is. And with the more work you do, the growth you do, you can insert this into your funnel and it was just slowly grow over time. So the more you grow your Facebook group, you can say, hey, make sure you check out our podcast. That's going to grow your podcast. That's going to mean more people are going to see it because it's going to grow. And so as you grow your regular stuff, you just insert your podcast and it's organically going to grow. You don't even have to do more work on it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Anyone got any questions here? I know that Phil and I have been dominating the conversation, but Azim.
Yeah, I was hoping to get a word in, Nick, but it is your show, so I guess that's okay. So Phil, something, and clearly Phil's allergic to early mornings of the sneezing and the coughing and all that sort of stuff, but that's okay. So we do apologise, Phil, and but just so that you know, we are in your future, so there is a future for you. Okay, so that's good.
Yay!
So here's a question, Phil. I've got a particular client that I'm working with, and they have a national presence here in Australia, but they also are looking at they have offices, an exposure in Canada and a few other places there, and they're expanding globally. And one of the things I was speaking to them recently about, when I say recently, like today, was the value of particularly having an internal podcast, right? So for the CEO and his team to basically be doing this internal podcast weekly that gives the whole crew the update on where they're going. However, on top of that, the suggestion I gave him was potentially if you added other things to it, because they're a distributor to a bunch of retailers, okay, that they could include those retailers into some private channel for the podcast, because that becomes an education piece they could bring. So it really becomes a private podcast. I guess that's where I'm going with that, right? Which is a great way of keeping engagement up with your retailers and all that sort of thing, because everyone forgets about you after 41 days, right? So, or until the next order. So I guess my question is around that. First of all, have you ever had any experience in something like that? And I guess it's no different to producing a podcast that's for the general masses, because you want to have fine production values, right? You know, and I just wanted to see if you'd ever had any experience with that, and like in terms of people you know that have done that, or companies that you know that have done that, or you may have produced one for some company.
So I personally have not done a podcast like that. I want to. It's something I really want to, because I know how valuable it will be for the team inside the
So Phil, time out. Everybody else, did you see how smoothly Phil just said, I'd really like to do one of those because I can see the, yeah, go on, Phil. Yeah.
Stop giving away my sales techniques. But I haven't, but I know of podcasts that have. I've talked with some business owners, and multinationals are doing it. So there are a few banks in Canada that actually have an internal podcast for their team, where they talk with other managers of different departments. So it's like, hey, if you want to upscale, you can go over here. You can learn about the upper management of where they're going, their story, so that you can become connected with the essence of the business. Because the more your employees are connected to the business, the more they're going to sell for you, the more they're going to give more from. Like, the biggest problem right now is a lot of the employees don't feel connected to the business. So if you give them an opportunity where they can learn from the CEO, learn more about the CEO, how they got into the job, where they're coming from, and feel like it's a one-on-one, because a podcast is one-on-one, because it's me listening to you. So I have that intimate feeling with you. So having the chance to either interview your employees, that gives a chance for your retailer, your in this case, your B2B business partners. They can learn about, I deal with Janice all the time. I want to know a bit more about Janice, so I can learn more about Janice. So now I have this better relationship with Janice. When I call in, I say, hey, Janice, I see you like this. We connect more, better relationship.
Who would have known that Janice liked nude skydiving, right? Until she
right? Who would have known?
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that, Phil. That's good. And yes, I will keep you in mind when I'm getting ready to do that.
Thank you.
Paul, you had a question too.
I do. If I was to get involved in doing this, there is not much point in me attempting to reach the whole world when all of my business is in a fairly small area, given the size of the greater Sydney area. So how would I target a niche in a fairly local area and address that market and engage with people in, say, the greater Sydney area, for example?
You would join Facebook groups that are in Sydney and just talk about what your business is. So if you're live streaming funerals, you can give them tips on like what's the benefit of live streaming your funeral, camera techniques. You would do a business adjacent podcast. So you wouldn't directly sell on your podcast talking about your business. You would put an ad inside your business calling yourself the #1 funeral memorial recording and live streaming business. That's what you would say. This podcast is sponsored by the #1 Sydney or Melbourne area live streaming for your funeral, so that the world can see and mourn with you. Whatever your business tag is, that's your ad. And then you just provide value on top of, since you do video production, you can teach them about video production. You can teach them about how to get the best angle with the lowest quality cameras and that, so that you're teaching your audience. And now more people come and they hear your ad and they're like, oh, well, he does live streams. Maybe I'll go to him. Maybe I'll tech to that. You know, mom and dad are getting up in age, or, you know, grandma's about to pass away. Maybe we should think about doing that, hiring Paul's production, because he's already sharing how to get your videos done on superb budgets. Let's have him handle that for us, so that it's not a strain, and we don't have to worry about calling Johnny, who's over in the US, home, because it's super expensive now with the rise of inflation and all that.
Okay, so it'd be more a case of like turning a series of posts into a podcast.
And that's all it is. If you have 52 posts, if you have 52 posts, you have 52 episodes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else got a question? This is your one and only chance to get all of your questions answered about how you can launch your podcast. I see some potentials here. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, David, did you have a question or this?
Look, I must admit, it gets you thinking about podcasts, so doesn't it? Like, even when you narrow a little niche down like that, where you can, it's probably more about informing, like in that for Paul's scenario. But yeah, obviously I'm in construction, so it's a broader field. But yeah, it does actually get you to think a little bit, where you think, oh yeah, that'd be a nice idea, but it's actually probably more in it than we can probably benefit. And like you say, even just start joining other people's, isn't it? Yeah.
And easiest way is to be a guest on someone else's. So lots of construction podcasts out there too, believe it or not. So
there's plenty of that. Yeah.
So if you do have that burning question, you think I should have asked that, how do we get hold of you, Phil?
Social media, Facebook is probably the best place to find me. I'm usually most active there. Just search for Phil Better. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Phil Better on Facebook, but if you do see a gentleman in a blue shirt with his arms crossed, that's as his profile picture, that's me. Just send me a DM and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have.
Excellent. And if you're in the digital space as well too, digital entrepreneur, then he may be more than willing to interview you. You can go through his automation process and see how all that works and see if you qualify.
It was a bit tricky finding you on LinkedIn, but I'd managed a little while ago.
Yeah, I don't suggest. That's why I suggest Facebook, because it's a little easier to find me than LinkedIn.
All right. So, well, thanks very much, Phil, for all of your knowledge and expertise tonight. So let's give Phil a huge round of virtual applause. But don't go just yet, because we do have a couple of door prizes for tonight. So you do have to be here for that. So, Phil, tell us, what is the door prize for tonight?
So the door prize is a full hour coaching with me. If you're interested in starting a podcast, that hour coaching will, if you have a podcast, we'll talk about how we can get it monetized, how we can grow it. We'll create a full strategy for you with me and you. If you don't have a podcast and you want to start a podcast and you don't know where to start, we will go through everything from A to Z in that hour. I usually charge $100 an hour, but because Nick is such a great guy, he twisted my arm. He didn't really. I offered it. I'm giving away 2 for free tonight. So 2 people on this call can actually win an hour coaching with me to get their podcast started or growth.
Fantastic. All right.
Does that include flights to Canada?
No, it's totally virtual. We'll do it over Zoom. Unfortunately, not there yet. I'll fly if you want to fly me out for an hour and then fly me back. That's good. But we'll do it by Zoom.
All right. So we do have we've got 2 of these to give away. And so we've got a two different ways of actually drawing this tonight. So
Yes.
we've got our wheel of names, but we might do that one second. So the first one, how are we going to do that, Phil?
So the first one is whoever DMs me first with Nick is saying Nick Creed is the best will win. So you have to send me a DM on Facebook, and the first person to do that, I will send you the link to get a free coaching with me.
All right. So now you've got to go and search for Phil on Facebook. Once you find him, shoot him a DM. And first one, coaching session is yours only if Nick Cree is the best. The second way we're going to draw this is with our wheel of names as well too. So this is our traditional means of doing it. So on screen, we have our coming up, our wheel of names. Everybody's name is inside that now. So let's give that a spin. And let's hope that the person that wins this one here is not the first person to come through on the DM as well. Otherwise, you get 2 hours. And our winner is Fred Gillen. Are you still here, Fred? Don't tell me Fred's disappeared, is he?
I think I may have saw Fred leave.
All right, let me just have a look at the...
Looks like he has.
He has. Oh, this is one of the few times Fred's won anything. All right. So someone can be tasked with letting Fred know that he won, but because he wasn't here, we had to redraw it. So let's spin that wheel of names again. And this time, our lucky winner is Janine Fraser. I think Janine's gone as well.
Janine's not even here. I don't think she was here, was she?
She was here. What was she? Yeah, she was here. Yeah, I thought she was too. All right. Well, there we go. It's someone can tell Janine. It sounds like Maura knows Janine, so let Janine know she won. But because she left, she also sort of donated her prize back to the draw. So let's spin it one more time. And ticking around, and this time it is May Rose. May Rose, you are the lucky winner for tonight. You're looking for the unmute button, aren't you?
Awesome, Nick. I'm super happy. Wow.
Fantastic. Well, I know that Jenny Mutu is really unhappy because she was just next to you and it just clicked over to you. So well done. So we will introduce you to Phil, or you can, even better, you can actually go and find Phil's profile on Facebook, DM him, send him a message, but we'll connect you by email tomorrow anyway.
Absolutely marvellous. Thanks a heap, Nick. I enjoyed the show. It was wonderful.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to your episode or your first podcast coming out.
Without a doubt. I'll do my best.
So
okay, sure just for you, Nick.
Thank you. Well, make sure you drop the link into Business Owners Smashing Online, and then I can share it out as well too.
Awesome.
Fantastic. And that there, folks, is our show for today. If you've enjoyed it, this will be up on YouTube tomorrow. So if you are not yet subscribed to the Smash Go YouTube channel, now is a fantastic time to go and do it. We'll drop the link into chat. Or if you just go to YouTube and just search Smash Go, you will find it. Link is in chat right now, so you can go and find that there. And we will be back again next week with our next show. In fact, we don't even have a speaker for next week. So if you have any suggestions for a speaker for next week, let me know, because we do have a blank space there. So Tim's got his hand up.
I sent through when you asked for speakers last time, I sent through the thing, but I didn't get the one that comes back with the calendar booking after you reviewed my...
Did you not? Maybe
I did not.
Maybe we decided that...
You're no good, eh?
That's it.
All right, well...
Oh, hang on. How did Phil describe it? It's not a good fit at the moment.
Well, if you're free...
When is it ever? Yeah.
If you are free...
You and I need
we'd love
coffee.
to have you back.
Sure.
That first session you did was awesome. So don't know what your timing's like for next week. If it works for next week, great. If
Can do
not,
it.
we'll do that. You can. So I'll get my people to talk to your people since the automation failed.
Well, because all the stuff is in the first email I sent you about the session. So.
Perfect. Yes, I do remember getting that as well too. So yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, that's our session for tonight. Again, thanks, Phil, for joining us so early in the morning. Really appreciate that.
So,
And
yeah.
thanks everyone for coming on.
Thanks, Phil.
Next time.
Thank you.